Technical difficulties here. You're good?
Good.
Okay.
Check with John.
Yep. How's our board? Everybody ready? Hi, Roger. Okay. 6:35. This is a regularly scheduled meeting of the Marquette Township Board. Tonight is Tuesday, January 16th, 2018, and we would appreciate if you'd join us in the pledge. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, Clerk Rattari.
Trustee LaRue.
Here.
Trustee Everson.
Here.
Trustee Wiegand.
Here.
Trustee Marks.
Present.
Treasurer Johnson.
Here.
Clerk Rattari is here, and Supervisor Durant.
Here.
Staff present is Manager Gerard, Township Attorney Roger Zappa, Committee Member from Planning, Recreation, and Road is Mike Springer is here.
Thank you. Public comment. Does anybody wish to come up to the podium? Name and address, please.
Good evening, Mike Springer, 206 Eagles Nest Road. Actually, I can't stay for the rest of the board meeting, so I'm going to just give you a quick Planning Commission report and also a Recreation Committee report. The Planning Commission elected me to be the chair for 2018, so I'm looking forward to that. One of the big agenda items we have in 2018 is updating our current master plan. And so we will work on that in 2018 because that's the last year that the plan is viable for. We either have to move it forward as it is, make some updates, or revise the plan. And the commission has decided that we will do some updates on the plan. We are currently reviewing Chapter 2 in the master plan, and we're using a checklist from Michigan State University Zoning and Planning Center to evaluate the minimum requirements of a master plan. So that's basically what's the main focus of the Planning Commission. The Rec Committee, a very similar thing. We are looking at updating our rec plan, which is out of date as of the end of next year, and so we will be updating that as the 5-year requirement. What we're doing is we're looking at the citizen survey. I have one sheet of paper here that I'll pass out to you. You can, and if you need to make copies of it for the future, please do. It's a summary of the survey from 2011 that identifies the recreation needs that I pulled out of the survey. So that's part of it. And the other thing is that we're also looking at our goals being possibly hung off of the Michigan statewide comprehensive outdoor rec plan, the SCORP. It was just approved. It's good for 2018 and 2022. They basically have one goal. They have 7 objectives. We may consider those 7 objectives as goals for our township, but hang our needs off of those goals. Also, we have our 4 goals from our current plan. You have the agenda for tonight in your packet for tonight's meeting that just occurred, and you also have the now approved minutes from the December 19th meeting. So I'm open for any questions that you may have about either the Rec Committee or the Planning Commission.
Anything for Mike? Sounds good.
Okay.
Thanks,
Thank you.
and congratulations.
Robert Sims, 2662 Montgomery. I just got a couple of questions. One, I'd like to speak on 8.2, the future water project. And I also like to know, you know, you've been talking about the budgets being tight, and there's no money for the police and that. And I saw on TV last Wednesday it was, I think, Randy said he told the board 5 years ago that this was going to happen because of the dark stores. Well, 5 years ago, since then, the number of full-time personnel that's been hired by the township is the biggest problem I think of, is because the budgets, you know, you got, in this year's budget, you got 3 full-time people and a couple of part-time people for building grounds and general services and recreation. At one time, there was 1 person part-time who took care of it. And administration, general services, you have 8 people, full-time people in the water department, 3 at the fire department. There's no reason why they can't take care of their own buildings, that many people. You know, if they took care of the building, they might have a little pride in it also. And I also like to ask Lynn, back in 2015, the board was supposed to get a written confirmation or whatever about having a restricted fund balance for the fire department from Ron Thal. Did that ever happen?
Well, I can answer you when you're finished.
All right, you know, so I guess that's all I have for now, and I'd like to speak later on.
Sure. Thanks, Bob. Anybody else wish to address the board?
Jack Deno, 2052 Center Street, Marquette, Michigan. Mr. Dan Pomple's out of town for a few months, so he asked me to come here and give some information that he would like to be provided with. After stuff he provided me with, and he wants to know some answers. Because I guess he sent a board member, each board member, a memo or an email, okay? So he started out with, for the past 2.5 years, the Marquette Township Fire Department has trouble with their budget. Because their budget problem last year, the Marquette Township Fire Department was looking into ambulance service to get money. Trustee John Marks even requested from the KBIC for a form for a donation. When the board decided to purchase the ambulance, budget manager Randy Gerard knew about a PA Public Act 33 in which the board could raise the millage of up to a 0.25. So if you increased it at their stuff for the fire department to get this to pay for that ambulance. Now, Mr. Pomple said he emailed Lynn Durant the following question on January 2nd. I have a question concerning the expenditures of the $192,000 charged to account 206-905-991-034, which is the principal loan payment for the fire hall. Where did this excess money come from? He was asking. Okay, why did as this excess of $192,000? Then why was it that? Yeah, he says, why does the taxpayers, if you had that much money, $192,000 found for the fire department, why do we have to pay for the ambulance with this 2.5 mils that were there? You know, that's what the question he was asking. Then he says the fire department has a budgeted amount of $80,000, which was paid for this loan. So this $192,000 that you surplus that you found, you know, why did you not pay for the ambulance out of that? You know, this is one of the questions. Lynn, your reply to the $192,000 was that you looked into this, and it seems there was some misunderstanding on how the accounting process was supposed to work. When the accountant told we had to spend it down, the fire balance years ago, she thought, okay, wait, no. She thought it meant just the capital accounts, equipment, vehicles, etc. But she didn't realize it meant the whole fund, including postage, legal supplies, contracting, stuff like that. She said it was almost impossible to bring it down to a zero balance. All right? So, then, Lynn, you stated that you remember someone, Rob T., saying if we had 10,000 or 20,000 left, that'd be okay. Just not had tens of thousands of dollars. So you and Randy explained that to her. She also knew that any excess funds were directed by the board to pay towards the buildings, so that's what she did. But apparently, there was about 2.5 years' worth of funds in the transfer and payment one. Budget manager should have been aware of this 2.5 years ago, okay, of this excess fund. Randy, you should have at least known about this. But to put the blame on the accountant doesn't make any sense. A check for $192,000 should have been approved by the budget manager before it was issued. Okay? Because that, if you take a look in your records and stuff, that check was issued in December. Supervisor Durant, you knew about these questions prior to the board meeting, and you were there when the board unanimously voted to pay the bills. I'm curious that nobody questioned this large expensive bill of $192,000 being paid for that loan, advancement paid for that loan, okay? Now, under the bills payable for January 28th, so the board would have been aware of it. So now, here's what he's saying. Why wasn't that $192,000 a line budget item? If it would have been a line budget item, your board would have been aware of it, and you guys could have discussed it to see where that $192,000 came from and where it could be used. All right? Then there was another concern that he brought up. Okay? This concern was with the general fund. Okay? The budget does not show that the general fund received from the solid waste loan some money. I believe around $200,000. And your solid waste does not show that being loaned to the general fund. Then, when we look into it, we're sitting there and saying, where is the payment back? You know, is there any kind of a payment back? So here's what was said.
Jack, you're at 5 minutes. Are you
Okay.
almost finished?
I'm almost finished.
Okay.
Okay. The manager said, it's not a debt as opposed to outside financing. It's an internal fund-to-fund transfer. That's why, you know, Dig and Board can pay it back, we can pay it back any time. I don't believe this, okay? When you borrow money from one fund to another fund, you have to have accounting purposes and accounting trackability, okay? So, this is a large loan that the waste had, okay? And there's no paybacks or any interest or anything else to the solid waste, okay? And I believe that these legal questions must be addressed.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Does Dan want us to have a copy of that, or? Well, I've got him right here. I just didn't know if you wanted to submit that in his name. There's a lot there. I don't know that we can answer everything right now. I would like to ask the board if they have any comments of either of your, thank you. And I'm just going to put a date on here.
Is this your only cap?
No, God, just in case.
Let's see, some of Bob's questions. Did anybody have anything they wanted to ask or say, or?
I just think the response should be, you know, read what he has, go over it, and give him a written response after, do not response now.
That's fine, but this is our opportunity if we want to. We don't
Yeah, I
have
know.
to. Anything?
We don't want to miss out on anything either.
Okay. Anything in regard to what Jack said? Right now? Okay. Randy, some of this applies to your staff. Do you want to comment, or should we just?
I guess the only comment that I'll make is the same comment I've made before. I fully expect to continue to have these gentlemen make issues. I suggest strongly that they be factual when they bring them up here and have done their own research. I'm not going to respond to any of it.
Okay. I will look at this after. Some of the things that you have said are not correct, or Dan is saying. Maybe I wasn't clear enough in my email, not sure, but we'll look into it and get an answer for you. So that's our board member comment. So next is the consent agenda, which tonight, let's see, we did not have an addition. Tonight includes approval of regular meeting minutes of January 2nd, Marquette Township Board work session minutes of January 9th, bills payable in the amount of $92,308.51, received committee reports and other reports, including the water production report of December, Marquette Area Wastewater Treatment Facility Advisory Board, meeting minutes of November 9th, Fire Department and Fire Marshal's report of December, along with the Sheriff's Department activity report, Recreation Committee agenda for January 16th, and draft minutes of December 19th, which Mr. Springer said were taken care of tonight. Roads Committee draft minutes of January 2nd, Downtown Development Authority minutes of November 13th, my supervisor's report, preliminary financial statement of December, and the treasurer's report from December. Correspondence not requiring board action, including the memo from the manager Gerard regarding University of Michigan iLab's eCities research project, and another memo from him regarding board questions for 2018 police services.
Move to approve consent
Second.
agenda.
Motion and support, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Then we need approval of the rest of the agenda. I'm going to make one addition. We did have a request for payment, and you did receive that in your mailbox, I believe, for the MNRTF grant payment so that we can get reimbursed. And you do have the, I guess you'd call it the requisition or the pay request on the back.
Where are you going to put it?
I'm going to add it to 7.
Move to approve the agenda as amended.
So I guess it'd be 7-2 because
That's the contractor request?
Yes.
Okay.
No, the payment for the MNRTF.
Yep, the contractor request.
Okay.
Okay.
Is there a microphone?
Support.
Oh,
Motion and support?
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Let's see, no declaration, board education,
Just for a moment.
sure.
I know that we've gone by the consent agenda, but I don't think we should pass by item 5 without some comment about, it's great to have a 5-star rating once again for the item 5.
5-star
Item
rating.
4.5.
Okay, 4-5, okay. Oh, the E-Labs,
Yeah.
yep. We got a 5-star rating, that's pretty good.
We can't just pass by that.
We're going to bring it up.
Okay,
Okay.
Did you want any comment on it, or just,
I-
I'm not sure.
I think we should stop and pay tribute.
it's fine. Do you want to explain it, Randy? It's in the packet.
It is in the packet. The University of Michigan, with their Dearborn campus, does an annual evaluation of communities around the state with regard to a variety of factors. And they ascribe, after they've done their surveys, they ascribe a value from 1 star to 5 star, representing 1 star being on the low end of the spectrum, 5 star being on the upper end of the spectrum in terms of a variety of economic factors, all kinds of things that basically generate activity within your community. We've been a participant not all of the years. We had our first time we participated in 2011. We were rated as a 5 star. We did not, we did not participate in 13 or 15, but in 12, 14, and 17, we've been rated at 5 stars based upon their analysis of the growth, the economic conditions, and the community conditions in this township.
Pretty good, hey?
It's very good.
Thanks for bringing that up.
And I think we should be noted that, because that's really something special. And also, if another community would have it, it'd be in the paper and everything else. I'm hoping that we get a little mention in the paper, and I think that's, should be noted, so.
Yeah, we can provide the report, well, it's in the packet, it could be picked up from the packet. Okay. The other thing to possibly mention out of the consent agenda too is the questions that we had on the police services contract. We did approve the 80 hours, if you remember last meeting, and the information was that the Sheriff's Department is still putting together a better package so that we'll have something for June. They've been really accommodating with some of their hours and the overtime and the vacation and the vehicle and everything, so that's going to make our package look a little bit better. They've been really good about working with us. So we can go to staff reports, right? Okay. We don't have Superintendent Page here, he's out of town. We do have the fire chief here, and he did provide you with some information. Ernie had asked for some graphs or pie charts, and we got one of each. And that is not in the packet, so I'm not sure if, because he just brought it over to me today. I had asked him for it on Friday. Packets, of course, were already done. This is basically the last quarter of 2017, and it includes part of January. And this is the call response time from 0 to 50 minutes. And this is, the big one on here is 3 minutes for that last quarter. So it starts down here to 0 to 50 minutes. Kind of gives you an idea of how quickly our team is getting out. The other one is, and I don't want to steal your thunder, Ron, location of alarms. Home residence is 56% of the calls for that same time frame, third quarter of 2017 and the first week or so of 2018. Home residence 56%, healthcare facility 3%. John can zoom in on that. So it shows you where a lot of our calls are still going to benefit the residents. It's not just, I don't know if you even saw that,
Do you
Roger.
have copies of that for us?
We can, sure.
Mailboxes.
In your mailbox.
Yep, we've got it.
Okay.
He was trying to figure out the software, and because, like I said, I asked him for this last week, and he said he'd give it to me today. So, yeah, we can make that available. So if you want to give us a little update, or answer questions, or whatever the board's pleasure.
If the board members have any questions, my fire marshal's report is the same format, the stats that we produce for you every month. And then in your mailboxes in the main office is what Lynn just held up. I put them in each one of the mailboxes late this afternoon. I guess I was hoping you guys were going to check them on the way in.
Usually do.
And the only thing, the ambulance update in there, I did have an update as far as total runs since we put the ambulance in service. was 83 total EMS runs. 81 have been in the township additionally under our countywide EMS agreement, and there are no ambulances available under the county agreement. Any ambulance, within the response area can be paged out, and we've been into the city once for a call, and we've also been all the way out to Chocolate Township one time for a call. Total billing, currently 18 runs have been billed for a total of $5,341. I'm told by MHR, our billing agency, that with the start of the new year, apparently most of these insurance companies have deductibles on them that the copay has to meet, then the insured has to meet. So they're telling us that some of these will be, each year when you start out, till these people meet their deductibles, we receive a little bit less than we will later on in the year. Once the deductibles are met, we'll receive slightly higher payments. And then additionally, we have 22 additional treated and transported runs that are still being processed by our billing agency, but they are runs that fall within this time period. Medicare, as I think the board is well aware of, has been a struggle from the beginning, getting approved for Medicare. Finally, when we contacted our senator, Jack Bergen, we received Medicare authorization within a week and a half after a month of trying to get Medicare authorization. Now we are waiting for the billing portion. Our provider, our biller, has sent in their billing format. Medicare is looking at it. Once they clear it, and then it will upload into their computer system for payment. Then we're allowed to go back. Because the problem was at Medicare, getting us authorized early, they have agreed to allow us to go all the way back to September 9th, which was the day the ambulance went into service, which is pretty unusual. Generally, until you're authorized, you really are not allowed to back bill. But Medicare, after they looked at the entire case, decided that they were going to provide that for us. The next item I had was just ALS runs versus the basic life support runs. We had 7 ALS billable runs and 11 BLS billable runs. Non-transport, as of 1/16/2018, we've had 65 responses that were non-transport. This is actually very typical. We get a lot of calls for patient has fallen, patient can't get back into bed. We respond to those. We get the patient seated. We do a medical review of the patient, and if we feel that they're able to, still take care of themselves, be put back in the bed or in the chair, whichever they prefer, we'll do that and get a signed refusal from that patient. So we've had a number of those, but it really is, that's a very typical call, I can tell you, from working with Marquette General EMS for 21 years. That made up a large volume of our call then and still does. So we've got quite a bit of billing out, and then obviously when Medicare, when they finally accept our the billing format from MHR and agree that it'll interface with their program, which Connie is hoping will be done this week, we'll be able to bill about an additional, I think, 23 runs that are outstanding there with Medicare. So it's moving along. We're fairly busy with the ambulance, actually a little busier than we thought we'd be. We're just waiting now. We moved the computer out of one of our other trucks into the ambulance, and I talked to Gary Johnson earlier today, and hopefully we'll start that interface program no later than about the 2nd to 3rd week of February. We'll actually be getting the software into the computers in the trucks. So moving along, not at the speed that I'd like to see, but we are moving along.
Thank you.
Any questions from the
Any
board?
questions? Oh, lots. Dave?
Ron, I seen last week there was some discussion about a freeze-up that occurred in one of the pumps, I believe it was, on one of the trucks.
We had a air leak.
The question was, I didn't see it in the vehicle status report, and because it seemed like it was going to be kind of a costly repair.
Well, we haven't got the total bill yet. We did a self-repair that involved a little self-tapping screws and a rubber gasket seal. So the truck is back in service. It goes down it's going in tomorrow morning at 8:15 for service. The new air tank is in, and they're gonna install the new air tank. I'll have a better estimate of the cost. I know what the air tank is, but we have no idea what the labor will be for the removal of the old one, installation of the new one. Okay,
Thanks.
Pete?
Looking at the reports and how many calls you're having, it's kind of remarkable, you know, that we cover so many calls on a call-in basis, you know, so they should be, you know, very proud, and I know I am very proud of having a department the way you have it now. And how is the morale of since you started the EMS, the morale of the fire people, are they?
Good. We have 2 people that are in the EMT class now that are going to complete. We had 2 more people that were going to take the class, but then one of their employment started to get questionable, and they were actually looking around elsewhere, trying to find out if they were still going to be in the area or if they'd have to move out. That's since been resolved, but it was too late for them to apply to do the course, so. And next week, we'll be interviewing 2 individuals, both who are EMTs. So we're still meeting all the calls. You know, we haven't had any issues. But we'd like to get a couple more EMTs onto the roster.
It just seems remarkable to me that, you know, the cities, they're there all the time in the house. Here, they have to leave their house and come up to the department, the fire department, and get on the road with it. It's something to be proud of. They should be very proud of what they do.
They do a good job, and we're fortunate a lot of them live in the greater Trowbridge Park area too, which is very helpful for us.
Well, and like you've said before, you don't have the shift work people that you used to, where it was a little more balanced. You know, most of your guys or girls are like an 8 to 5 job, so it's a little more difficult, but they're still making it in big percentage in 3 minutes response.
Well, and a large amount of our calls still are daytime calls. If you look at the stats over the last year, most of our calls occur between 9 a.m. and 4 p.m. It's just great. It works out for us. And I think a lot of it is just, you know, the volume of people coming into town, going back out at the end of the workday. And so far, the coverage has worked out, you know, pretty good, so we haven't had an issue.
That was one of the reasons we expanded the force to 3 people also, because you've got coverage then if one vehicle's out, or if somebody's on vacation or sick. It made a difference to have at least that core available.
Yeah, we stagger our daytime people so that we always have 2 people on duty.
Dan, you had a question?
I just wanted to comment also on after I spent 27 years with the city department, coming out here in the township department. I'd just like to commend you also they do a fantastic job. They put their big foot forward and do a great job. So you should be commended for that.
Thank you.
Then, I got one more question.
Sure.
On your citations, where are they coming from?
Citations, the fines, you mean?
Yes.
Blocking of hydrants and primarily parking in fire lanes and some of our bigger commercial buildings, blocking of fire lanes.
The reason for that question, there's a lot of people parking there, and I just wanted to make sure that we tell them that you're not allowed to be in there or you will be cited.
If they're in the vehicle, we'll just come up and warn them and explain that they have to move the vehicle. If no one's in the vehicle, we're not going to tie somebody up for 15, 20 minutes waiting to see if they come out. And they're ticketed at that point.
What kind of a fine is that?
$50,
Okay.
blocking a hydrant or parking in the fire lane, is the same fine. So.
Yeah, you've seen some of the cartoons or whatever on TV where they take the hose and they go right through one window and out the other one. If you're going to be in the way, too bad.
Yeah,
I don't know that we would do that, but.
we hadn't had
Oh, yeah.
any sort of that yet.
Do you have very many residents cleaning out like fire hydrants, Ron?
I'd say probably 60% of the residents take care of the hydrants in their immediate area.
Good,
They
very
really
good.
do. It's pretty amazing the amount of them that are opened up.
Good.
You know, I just want to make sure everybody remembers that when we talked about the ambulance, we knew this was not, we were not going into this to make money. We were there to provide a service, and whatever else we collect is over and above what is budgeted. So it's clearly, once we get the finances, it's a good year before we are going to have any kind of a baseline, but you know it's going to take 2 years so that you have a frame of reference back and forth. So Connie has said already, she told Ron that they're amazed at our volume. They didn't, because they have to look at our stats to know how much staff to have on and what they're going to be responsible for, and they're way ahead of what they were even expecting. But so far, it hasn't been a problem. A lot more people in town.
Yeah, it's busy.
A lot of
We have
things
the
going
no
on.
case coming up. We'll have part of our EMS people will be out in the no K trail race. So.
Anything else for Ron? No? Thanks. So we'll save Public Works till next time. So down to 7, community linkage is where we are going to ask the board to authorize this payment. We can get reimbursed. Randy, do you want to talk about your memo?
Sure. If board members will recall, 2016, you authorized the Planning and Zoning and Recreation Committees to go forward with the Michigan Natural Resources Trust Fund grant program to improve the Schwemmwood Park and portions of the Lions Field Recreation area. What you have before you now is the 2017 version of that, which is primarily Schwemmwood Park. We are asking, we didn't get this pay request in time to get it into the packet. That's why it's before you tonight the way that it is. But the pay request is important to us because this has to be paid, and we have to send a copy of the check into the MNRTF for them to give us the reimbursement, which goes back into the solid waste fund. It's the $36,600 that you had approved in 2016 as a transfer.
And I believe, didn't we set that up, Ernie, to pay interest?
Yes.
Yes,
I thought.
correct.
Voting on that. Okay. Pleasure, can I have a motion, or,
I shall move.
Second.
this doesn't need to have a roll call or anything, it's just a pay?
No, it's just that it exceeds my authority to authorize, so it's back before the board.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Policy discussion, consideration and development, power plan, insurance 2018 renewal proposals. I did have some questions for the manager. I got those answered already. Did anybody else have anything they had questions on? You want to give a prelim, Randy?
Sure. This is an annual renewal. It is our power plan general liability insurance. It covers all of our vehicle insurances and property casualty, bonding, all of the general insurance. It also includes our power plan and workers' compensation coverage through the accident fund. As you'll see in the transmittal this year, we are receiving in June a rebate on our premium. The way the workers' compensation through the accident fund works is they do an assessment of us and do an estimate in terms of what our premium will be for the year going forward. Then they come and do an audit, and the actual claims then are adjusted. If we have less than what was anticipated, we get a rebate. If we have more than anticipated, they bill us additional. So for this year, we'll be receiving a rebate a little more than $1,300 in June. You'll be seeing that. The proposed renewal this year is for about $438 higher than it was last year. It's the same level of coverage. The difference is we've added the ambulance, we've added the rescue Sea-Doo, and we added a trailer to the vehicle fleet. That comprises the $438 increase.
Any questions? Yes, Pete. John.
Got the same style.
Couple of bookends.
Motion to concur with the recommendation of the manager on the power plan.
Support.
Motion and support. Any other questions for the manager? Did we go out and do any kind of bidding on this, Randy?
We did not go out and bid this year. The last 3 times it's been renewed, we went out for bids. All 3 times we had 1 response. All 3 times it was higher. It's the same company still in place, so we didn't want to spend the money to go through the bidding process this year. It's essentially the same premiums as last year with the additions that we put on.
in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Pay the bills. Discuss future water projects. Bob, did you want to speak first, or? It's you.
I'd rather wait until you're done.
Sure. That's fine. Yeah, it's just to discuss what we're going to do. The preliminary of this is that, we're looking, we went to policy governance this year, and part of that, if you'll notice the budget, or the agenda is a little different. Part of that is working on our annual plan of work. What do we expect to try to accomplish this year? And in that discussion, and I think part of that answer came in budget discussion, was whether or not to continue the water project, or phase 2, I should say, of the water project, which entails Morgan Meadows, Mason's Bluff, and going up 492. So we did have a work session last week. So was that this week? That was this week, yeah. Lose track of time. And tried to get some of the nuts and bolts worked out as to what we think money-wise and project-wise. We had a conference call with Susan Radwan, who is our policy governance guru, and we went through what's involved in trying to find the information we want. So we put it back on the agenda so we could make some kind of a decision. We did say during the budget session that we were going to wait, but the work session brought up more questions. So I put it back on here so that we can decide once and for all, or not, whether to continue with this, or where to go with any of the water projects. Yes, Dave?
I think in light of the information we found tonight is that the contract with the city doesn't actually expire until 2028. I still think that we shouldn't hold off for a couple years to do it. We should just take a more regimented, more cautious look at it. And from my perspective, the first thing I'd like to see is, I know the manager put together a report a couple years ago, before I was on the board certainly, is that compared proposed city water rates to cost for putting in phase 2. And I would like to see that updated and a nice summary of that, so we got some hard facts to take a look at, so that, I mean, it could be that it's not worth it because it's going to be too expensive versus city water. But it would be nice to just start at that slow of a pace, to take a look at that recommendation from the manager. And Randy, I don't know if you recall that letter you had put together on that?
I do.
It would just be nice to see that updated and given to the board for the next meeting, so we could talk about it and actually have some numbers in mind.
We did actually talk about getting the previous information updated, but that would cost a few bucks to do that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm not sure.
I think we could just move ahead for now, because we've got an extra 3-year window. Just move ahead, not for now, just to look at what the manager's got for recommendation on it with this, and the cost structure that's looking at both sides of it, and make a decision based on facts instead of spending a bunch of money to get the Stantec plan updated. And I don't think, we still don't have that master plan at the DEQ, a copy of that yet, do we?
I have not gone to get one. Nope, I don't have that.
John, I don't know if it was you or Pete was first.
Go ahead, John.
I just wanted to say, I agree. We've got the luxury now of being able to take our time and look at this in a very methodical way. I don't think we should just put it off, because that's always a mistake. But we have the time now to schedule more sessions when the manager's through and presents an update. Then I think we ought to have another work session and talk about it. And the last one was fruitful. We got a lot of things off the table, and set some agenda items to work towards. we need to know not only what we're thinking about as a group, but we need to know where the city is. And I think that as much as we can do to explore that and have information in place, we're going to have a better decision made, and we can't wait till 28. But what we can do is as Dave has suggested, we can make an intelligent, methodical decision, and we can be ready. We can be ready to move in a couple different ways. And what that really means is whether we're going to be thinking about working cooperatively, if we can, with the city, or we're going to have to do something on our own. And that's a big decision.
As long as it doesn't cost us any money.
Long as the planning can be done intelligently in-house.
Right, okay.
Pete?
First two steps, as I see it, is the research from Randy, he does his updates, and the next one, if we agree and have a work session, agree on what we're reading and looking at, that it's a possibility to go farther, then update the last report that we got, and that's what you're going to talk about, adding a couple dollars, going to have updated, and then go from there.
Randy?
Just a couple of clarifying points. The 2028 date is not contract renewal. That's February 2028. What that is the duration of the discounted water rate. So by 19 years following the signing of the current agreement, if we have not taken advantage of $564,000 of reduced water rates, the rate will increase as of February 2028. If we do utilize that much water prior to February 28th, it will terminate at that point. So that's built into the agreement. The agreement is subject to court review. Currently, the duration of the agreement, so there is a threat there that we need to be aware of. We also need to be aware of the fact that there is development going on in the city with the new hospital and with the new developments for hotels and the new hotel in South Marquette by the prison and the treatment plant that will hasten the city's required upgrade of their water system. We're only responsible for the increase in cost that's necessary to serve us, to provide water to us. So much of that expense is not going to be there, but the plant itself will have to be upgraded, and that will impact our costs. That portion of the plant that is deemed to be necessary for providing water to the township will be passed along in rates at your next rate renewal, which is about 2 years from now. Every 3 years, we have a rate renewal study done by an independent outside source. They'll be doing that in about 2 years. So those are cautions. With regard to the existing plan, you have it on the shelf. It's now about 5 years old. It was updated about 3 years ago. It would need to be updated again, and what the purpose of the update is not to rehash or to reconfigure or to redraw the engineering. It's cost-based. It's to reassess the cost of materials, cost of labor, and those types of activities. That would be the cost, and that's going to be probably in the neighborhood of $20,000 to update that. So unless and until you make a decision to go forward, you should hold off on that decision. But in the meantime, there are some things that do need to be done. Roger needs to finish his work on easements. You need to have easements in place. We own the property. And we need to have the easements to be able to access that property. And there are a few easements that are still open out there that probably need to be completed in this interim while you're deciding what to do, because you will need those easements at some point. So I think that process should go forward, and I would recommend that you do allow council to go forward with completing those easements. With regard to the update of the report that I did about 2 years ago now, I believe it was, that's an easy fix. I can do that for your next meeting easily. I'll probably get that out to you before the meeting, so you can have, before the regular packet time, so you can have some opportunity to ask questions, do additional research. I will also send out to you again the summary that I sent out about 3 years ago to all board members. And I also sent it out about 5 years ago to the prior board that talks about Phase 1, Phase 2, the actions that the board has already taken in that regard and what the alternatives were that were looked at. So I did send that out to Trustee Wiegand and I think Trustee Everson when you came on board, but I'll send it out to all the board members again just as a refresher.
What's a rough cost on what the easements would be? I mean, is that like 20,000 also, or 500, or just
Well,
some
it
kind
shouldn't
of
be anything
ballpark?
close to 20,000. I had no idea this was going to be a topic of discussion, and it's been collecting dust for about 10 years. There are, in my recollection, at least
Roger, move the microphone closer, please.
10 easements that were never finalized because the project was aborted, essentially, so there was no point in moving forward or incurring additional expense. I am sure that the property owners have changed maybe multiple times on a couple of those parcels. Some of them were commercially held parcels. There are a couple of easements that were acquired, and those were recorded with the Register of Deeds office and are done. I would have to take a look at how many are needed. A lot of the legal work on getting legal descriptions and so forth was done. So while this doesn't provide much help, you indicated it would be 500 or 20,000, it would be much
Somewhere in
closer.
between.
It would be somewhere in between. But it
I'm
would
trying
be
to put
closer
that
to the
spot.
500 end than the 20,000 end.
It gives us kind of a ballpark.
Yeah, it's not a long distance, but there are a lot of small parcels that would be touched in terms of routing. If we follow the same routing that has been designed into the system, I mean, that can always be altered as well, depending on property changes, ownership changes, things such as that. So that is something that we should probably continue to look at and to get basically cemented, so that will not be a hindrance if the board decides to pull the trigger and go forward. But also remember that the DEQ permitting process is going to take a year. We already have the plan, so we don't have to spend the time developing that, but to submit that plan and go through the public hearing processes and to go through the application processes and the review processes will take about a year before you can do anything.
He will use the old rates when he's doing that work, so.
Go ahead, Dave.
I guess what I was suggesting when I started out here was that it would be, I would like to see the board by consensus direct the manager to provide us with the summaries he's mentioned, along with that Stantec report and the master plan that's on file with the DEQ. And I think we could probably add to that a summary of what the proposed cost might be to do the easements so that we can take a little more methodical look at them. And after everybody's got those and had a chance to read them or go through the pertinent sections of them, then we could put a work session together to talk about it.
Sounds like a plan.
Yeah,
We'll
you
put
do
that
have
on the
3
next
weeks.
agenda.
3 weeks till your next meeting, so that gives ample time to do that.
Ernie?
I think with the time frame that had been extended before we have to make some action, I think the direction that Dave's alluding to is great. But I think we have to start getting this information and start laying out all the steps that we have to identify. And by once they do that, and then you start putting some time frames on this and that, then you can move forward in that. But we have a luxury right now because we do have some extra time to do some of this stuff and that. We're not under the gun and that.
Yeah,
So
the
we
plan-
can move forward.
The plan that's on the shelf does have a time frame, has a calendar basically in it, and they're laying out time frames that would be required. You just have to convert that to your current calendars.
When we were having our work session, we thought that discount date was 2025.
That was the original,
Right.
yeah, see, that was the original contract date, would have terminated in 2025. We negotiated an extension, and then it was from that date for 19 years, which was 2009.
So when the Randy's looked at the contract, that brought it back to 28, so that's what we're talking about.
By doing it this way and get, what we want to achieve, it won't be like our work session that we could worrying about the water inside the rocks and how much, we're going to be specific, we know our facts, and let's decide from there and then take the next step.
Well, and we don't have to start from scratch. Everything's
Exactly.
already done. It's just a matter of updating the cost. see if it's cost effective. Anything else from anybody? So we'll put that on the February agenda. Go ahead, Bob.
Well, now I know what you're talking about, Morgan Meadows. One thing you gotta remember, just raised the water rates 24%, debt service 14% last year. You still have to put in the water main on Ontario Street. Who's gonna pay for that when the county does the road? I think you might be stretching the water budget pretty thin here, and the local residents are getting tired of paying for this extension. When the water went up Grove Street and that, there was the only people who paid for it, the same thing on Vandenboom, was the people who hooked up to it. There was no special assessment applied to those people. So they have water in front of their house, they have fire hydrants in front of their house, they're getting the benefit from it, and they're not paying for it. So any additional water lines or extensions should be special assessment, and the people should pay for it. When water came into Trowbridge back in 72, 73, those people paid for it, and they're still paying for it. And all the extensions that are being put in, these people are still paying for, the water. So that's something you're gonna have to look at before you go ahead with this project. I hate to bring up history, but you look at back in 2010, people didn't like it. Thank you.
Thanks. I don't know that this board talked about that too much. It didn't come up as much.
What's that?
Well, one of the things we did point out at our work session was that we really didn't want to do anything until some of this debt was retired. And we're still kind of waiting on you and Kirk to put that, when he gets back, put that together, is how much we can pay down some of that debt this year. So that's part of it. But we didn't want to incur another water project debt until some of this was gone. So it wouldn't, I don't want to say it'd be a wash, but it wouldn't be an additional debt.
Well,
And
much
again,
of-
that's why we're looking, 6, 7 years ahead.
Much of it depends on, when it's done and how it's done. The first project, there was a reference in the 70s, that was a federally funded project. That federally funded project required the individuals to pay for it. The projects we've been doing are not federally funded projects. They were projects that were done through Michigan DEQ, Drinking Water Revolving Fund, and that requires the users to pay. So if you're not a user, you don't pay. So that's the difference between those systems. As it sits right now, our policy, our practice is, if we run a water line in front of your house, you're connecting, period. The only one that is an option is the sewer. You don't have to connect to the sewer, you do have to connect to the water. That's a health department requirement. So, at any event, the Phase 1 water project is what you're referring to, and that's the monthly payment, and that was a decision of the board. The board had the option of deciding how that was going to be paid for. They broke it between water rate and a fixed payment monthly, and that's about to expire. That's what we were referring to.
Go ahead, Bob. We want to be able to hear you.
The state does not require you to hook up the water if you run it. The state requires to hook up the sewer if you use state or federal money to put the sewer in. That's why,
It's the opposite.
so, if anybody in Trowbridge Park right now wants to drill a well, put a well in their house and unhook the water, they can do it.
Yeah, but the sewer, I think you have to.
The health department will not issue a permit if there's public water available.
As far as I know, too. Well, in any case, too, this is just one of the water projects we talked about during our work session. And there may be others. Well, we can't do much of anything until Kirk gets back. So we'll be looking at it this year. Okay, from the consent agenda.
Right here.
Skipped over 3.
Got it on yours.
Oh, it's
Police
not on
services.
mine.
Police services.
Well, and that's why I mentioned it before, because I thought, well, it didn't get on there, we were just gonna leave it on the, okay. Maybe I printed my agenda too early. Consider responses regarding board questions for 2018 police services. Okay. As I said before, you got a packet, a memo in your packet from the manager. Let's see if I can find mine.
Yeah, while
Talking
while
about
you're
the package.
setting up,
Go ahead.
Following your last meeting, the board had several questions, concerns with the wording of the current sheriff's contract, specifically regarding the calculation of overtime, the provision of the patrol vehicle, and what some of the history was. Many of, well, I think none of the board members currently seated were present when the contracts were first negotiated. I don't think Ernie was either in '94. Were you on the board in '94? You were, okay.
Yeah.
What this derives from is the federal COPS grant back in the '90s. And at that time, the federal government offered grant funding for additional police officers in rural areas that would enhance the provision of police services with the federal dollars to address enforcement concerns that there were. Along with that COPS grant, if you agreed, which the Marquette County did agreed to, was a requirement that at the completion of the COPS grant, those officers would be taken into regular employment and be retained. That's where this contract derived from. The sheriff of the county and the sheriff at that time approached the township, all of the townships in the county actually, and asked if they would be interested in having officers assigned under the COPS grant. We did. This township agreed to do that along with several others. That's where the contract started. When the COPS grant terminated, it was converted to an actual contract between the Sheriff's Department, County Board, Sheriff's Department, and the Township Board to meet that obligation of the COPS grant to retain those officers in place. That's where the original contract came from. As I laid out in the history previously, in the document that I had sent out to you, there were several iterations of that contract over time. It's originally started as a 3-year fixed-term contract, provided 56 hours of police coverage, and the sheriff provided all of the patrol vehicles and all of the equipment. In 1999, there was a change by this township board that converted that agreement from a 56-hour plus an additional 12 hours that they had funded generally to an 80-hour-a-week contract to be effective in 2000, January 1st of 2000. At the same time, they, by formal resolution, agreed to provide the patrol vehicle. Now, at that time, what was happening is it was a standard-looking patrol vehicle. You know, what the Sheriff's Department would do is when the vehicle got to 85,000 miles, they would retire it, keep it in their system as a backup, and replace it with another car. So over time, what we've done is we've taken a different position that if we're providing the vehicle and it reaches the 85,000 miles, 80 to 85,000 miles roughly, and we're going to simply retain it in their system, we take it back, as we have the last number of years. We utilize that to run back and forth to Lansing with, and that saves us between $14,000 and $18,000 a year in mileage. So that's, you know, we get $2,000 on the trade-in if they keep it. They give us $2,000. So we've been doing that now for quite a while, and we'll do it again. The patrol vehicle that's currently there, it was about, I don't remember how long ago it was. We converted the paint when they replaced it to match our fire department with orange coloring as opposed to the standard gold and black coverage of the standard sheriff's patrol car. So that's how the contract got there. It's been renewed annually, year after year after year. No major changes have been made to the contract. There were several, as I say, there were several iterations over time by resolutions of the board and things such as that have never been appended to the contract. So what Captain Kangas, who is the current road patrol captain, we put together this document to address some of the questions that were raised by the board members with the intention that this would be appended to the contract, become a part of the contract, and basically answer some of the questions that were raised. So with that, I throw it to the board for any questions, concerns, issues, whether or not it answers your questions, whether you would like to carry it over till the February 6th meeting, have the Sheriff's Department present. They couldn't be here tonight because of issues they've got going on to the west. They did call and offer their apologies and said they would not be able to make it, weather-related issues that they're dealing with.
John?
Well, I just want to say that I have read communications from our manager about the negotiations and the suggestion that we have some letters of understanding, some kind of a communication like that. I'm satisfied with what's come up, and the fact that we're going to go back in June or July and talk about it again, I think that's enough. I'm comfortable with what you've agreed to, and I think the board should be.
Dave?
I have 4 questions.
Just 4?
Just 4. I read the letter, and just for my own clear understanding, the overtime costs of the 13 observed holidays, that's in the $189,862 budget?
It is.
Okay. So there's no overtime charge that would be billed for that?
No, and in fact, we will likely get a credit back for that. Because what we have talked about and what the sheriff has suggested is that to keep the cost down, that some of the more minor holidays, like the Martin Luther King Day today, holidays like that are not high-traffic holidays, that they would not put our officer on the road. They would cover it with regular patrol officers that would not incur overtime.
The next question I had when I talked about it at the last meeting was the response outside of the township. And it sounds like I'm complaining that our township officer is leaving the township, but I am not.
No.
I'm suggesting that there are very good reasons why he would leave the township. What I am suggesting is that I'm not sure that it's right that the township is paying the bill while he's gone. And it may occur 1 hour a year, it may occur 100 hours a year, I don't know, and I don't think it matters. But I think a good thing to address in that letter of understanding is how is that addressed? The third thing is the patrol vehicle. I think that should be in that letter of understanding, that there will be a patrol vehicle and the conditions under which that patrol vehicle is in there. Just because when the question was brought up at the last meeting, nobody really knew how it got there except Randy. I think it'd be nice if that letter was attached there and so everybody knew how it got there. And the last one was, yeah, that was it. Just, I think the contract is good like it is. If that memorandum of understanding was attached to it and addressed those issues, I'd be good with it.
Okay. What we did talk, just so you know, what we did talk about was with regard to the outside of the township, they will not, our deputy will not be responding outside of the township unless it's an imminent public harm issue, active shooter, officer down, something like that, then everybody's going. It doesn't matter what they are. And in that case, I did talk with them about a credit, and that is not an issue.
Well, and I hate to sound like I'm nickel and diming this whole thing.
No, and it's a valid question.
It seems like it's a little irresponsible because they could be gone for 100 hours a year.
Well, it is valid, and depending upon what occurs in neighboring communities, Chocolate, for instance, some of the development that they've going on out there may require backup more often than not. Some of the issues in Powell Township, Sands Township, may require backup, but they are giving us assurance that it would not be our officer unless it was one of those conditions that was an active public harm issue that needed mitigation. I would suggest or ask if it would be reasonable for the board for me to pull that resolution that the board adopted in 1999 and attached that to the contract. That addresses the patrol vehicle, and it also addresses the 80
Yeah,
hours.
I'd be fine with that as long as it was something that followed the contract year after year.
Sure, we can do that.
Pete?
Also, you should point out, Randy, that we did improve upon our reporting system as far as retail fraud.
They did make a major change to that. That was one of the issues, one of the primary issues that the board had during the budget process when we were debating whether or not to go in the 60-hour direction, and that was the amount of time that was being spent on retail fraud issues. The current Sheriff Zybert, when he took office and modified some of the procedures, that was one of the procedures that was modified, and basically what it amounts to is our officer would only be summoned to do the initial on-site, and then a regular patrol officer would take it from there to do the paperwork and to do the any follow-up lodging, I'll say lodging, that might be necessary. So that was the major concerns, because we were seeing issues where a relatively minor event in one of the retail facilities would tie up our officer for 4 to 6 hours in terms of doing the investigation, doing the transport, doing the booking, if a booking was necessary, and then following it through with the court trial, the court hearing. On a different date, so that was
Especially if you get 8 or 10 of them.
well, that was a serious concern because it was occurring quite regularly, so that was your primary reason for talking about dropping it from 80 to 60 and limiting what they would be responding to. That was your primary concern, and I think the sheriff has stepped up and addressed those concerns.
We made good progress, so.
Dan?
I concur. I think the language is fine. I still have the one question that, what's to stop us from putting this on the ballot and having the voters vote to, rather than have the funding come out of the general fund?
Nothing. That certainly is within your purview.
What's the board's feeling on silence?
The two items that would fall in that category would be recreation funding and the law enforcement funding. Those are two areas that you are not required by statute or regulation or anything else to provide.
Can you tie that into the fire and police?
Well, you already have public financing for the fire department. You're talking public safety. The issue with public safety is the cost of the police side of it. Tying into the lean network, establishing the protocols and the insurances, the equipping and all of that. We've looked at that half a dozen times over the 17 years that I've been here, almost 17 years, and it's never worked out on paper. We did have some conversations several times with Marquette Township about having a coordinated system with them, since they already had that in place, but it just never turned out to be workable.
Sometimes it's cheaper to lease a car than it is to buy one.
Our cost, as high as it seems, is substantially less than it would be with our own force. First off, you're probably going to be expected to provide 24/7 coverage, and that's a minimum of 7 officers full-time, with holidays, vacation, and everything else.
It's awful expensive also. I discussed it with Sheriff Zybert several years ago. We just went by all the training, the cars, insurance, and all the other things. And every 2 years they have to go through a lot of it. It's, you know.
On the simple liability for turning loose an armed officer under your direction is high.
Escanaba does it, you know. I went down to Escanaba and I talked to him, and the officer that was there, that day he was a police officer, and but other times he's a fire department. And he said the hard thing about it is that when you get to an incident or a fire or something, you don't want to be directing traffic, you want to get in there. So he said everyone likes the fire department, but nobody likes the police department. So, but, you know, it's costly, it's not cheap.
Public safety is not a good answer, in my opinion. That's all you got to do is, if you want to rob a bank, is go start a fire.
Yeah, the long and the short of it is, short answer to your question is yes, but, as you've heard from the audience, folks are getting tired of cost, additional costs.
That's why I brought it up. And
yeah. And, as we continue to see taxation issues, we're going to have to be looking to those kinds of funding options at some point.
But we have to support our residents because there are more and more things from the outside are coming into the township and, you know, it's scary if you stop and think about it, so.
A lot of what we discussed with Representative Cambenzi, you know, type up some notes for those who weren't here, was funding, period. And it's not just the dark stores, as Randy's pointed out numerous times, it's half a dozen things. Whether it's exemptions or personal property or the tax tribunal or, you know, there's multiple reasons our funding is down. So, and every time we have these kinds of discussions, the first thing we say is, well, how much can the public handle? You know, can they handle another $1, 50 cents, or $2, or whatever it is, no matter what we're asking for? And we don't think they can right now.
We're not the only community, it's statewide. In Michigan in particular, it's statewide, where there's eventually going to have to be a laundry list of what is it you want to fund, and if you don't want to fund it, we don't do it anymore. I mean, that, you're going to get there. Whether it's city, county, or townships all over the state of Michigan are facing the same thing. Costs are going up dramatically, revenues are not. Revenues are going down or they're stagnant.
Lansing's not thinking about cutting. They get too crazy with Social Security, Medicare, the things that people care about, and they've got waste in their own offices and they don't do anything about it. They don't check it or audit it or anything. Anyway, that's my soapbox. So, anything else on this? We will... Do we need to do anything in the next agenda? We don't really. We're going to just wait till June.
If this is acceptable to you, then that ends the issue and we'll go forward.
He's gonna get us a
June.
couple copies
Yeah,
of what he said he said.
You will get a formal report. The sheriff will be here for your second June meeting to give you the cost impacts of what the efficiencies are that they've done, and then you will decide what you're going to do for the second half of the year.
You're gonna get us a report that you said you were gonna.
Mhm.
And when would we see that letter of understanding that gets tacked onto the contract?
I'll put that together and just send it out to you. We won't wait till your next meeting's not for another 3 weeks, so I'll just send it out to you. And then we'll put it on the agenda.
Yes, Ernie?
And at the June or July meeting, whenever we have with the sheriff and that, we'll also determine the status of our budget.
Mhm.
That's how we're going to move forward in that. We may want to continue with 80, but we may not physically have the resources to do it.
Well, if you'll remember, the entire budget is going to be reviewed in June. That we agreed to a mid-year budget review and adjustment going forward for the second half of the year, whatever needs to be adjusted, whether the revenues increase as a result of tax tribunal decision in the Escanaba Menards case, or there are more reductions, whatever. We'll be looking at the budget in mid-year to determine what you do going forward for the second half. We have to maintain a balanced budget.
Yes, Dave, I saw you. I knew it.
Not to ignore Trustee Everson down there. I think his issue of putting it on the ballot makes sense, but I think, I guess I'm curious if it was going to be on a November ballot, when would we actually have to make that decision?
August.
Yeah,
By August.
That would
Mid-August.
work out nicely with the June 30th evaluation, and when we get to look at the budget again in June 30th and see where we're ending up, we may very well want to put that on the ballot. You always have people in here saying we need to keep it at 80 hours, but it'd be nice to actually get a vote on who wants to really keep it at 80 hours and who just seem to see it go away. And I think we're probably talking to pay that just shy of 200,000. It's probably $1 million, huh?
It's $1 million.
1 mil.
Same as the library.
So I think we
Actually, the library generated
Thank you for
204.
reminding
We
Yeah.
shouldn't just let that lie there. We should take another look at it. We look at it in June and decide if we want to put it on a November ballot or not.
Well, it was overwhelming support from the public that brought that up over and over when we had the public hearing, and I think it would easily pass.
Yeah, the library was at .9, and it generated 204,000.
That's
So
under the,
it's-
they're
They're-
under the
they're
headlight.
the Headley. So it'd be slightly more than that. It'd probably be 207, 208,000 for 1 mil, which would certainly you wouldn't need a full mill, is what I'm suggesting. You only need 190, well, it would have been 195 this year with a 3% increase, 180, 189 without that.
Okay, we can talk about it. We'll talk about the letter of understanding at the next meeting then, too. He'll get that to us earlier. Anything else? Okay. Didn't have any items pulled from the consent agenda. We did get a little bit of committee updates. Dave, did you want to add anything on planning?
Just to tag on to what Chairman Springer said, is the master plan update and that is going to take us well into the fall of this year before that's ready to come to the board for a look at it. And the rest of the elections, Mike Springer is the chairman of the Planning Commission, and Jim Johnson is the vice chair, and I'm the secretary again. And then for the road committee, there's no update. You got that update at the last meeting, and we haven't had a meeting since. And the rec committee had their elections tonight, and Mike Springer is also chair in that. And the vice chair is Todd Caruth, and then I'm the secretary on that also. And that would be it.
Any questions for Dave? Okay. I don't have any appointments. I'm leaving that on there just in case, because if you remember, not all the committees open up at the same time of the year, so I'm trying to watch that a little more closely. Any public comment?
Just got 3 comments. One, if you had a little bit more information on the agenda, like the water project, where it was going to be in that, I think it'd be more helpful to people. You're talking about the police coverage and that, about the townships, cop going out to the city or the township, or the Powell Township or whatever, and you're talking about getting reimbursed for that. You're gonna have to remember, the city police and northern cops come out here quite a bit also. So it could be a two-way street there. Are you gonna start reimbursing the city when one of their cars come out here? So that's just something to think about. And the third thing would be, Randy said a lot of these facts are not factual. Everything I bring to the board either comes from the board itself, that's on Facebook, through the agenda, or through the packet. And I'll put any of my facts to whatever he wants to talk about. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any announcements? Anything anybody wants to share? Yes, Randy.
As we just talked about a few moments ago, there will be 2 elections this year, one in August, which will be the primary for the midterms, and one in November. There could be a May election, but there's no indication that the school district or the county is going to have one at this time, so I'm not thinking we're going to have a May one, but we are going to have an August one and a November one. And I know that the library question will probably be on the November one. And if the board has any opportunity, they want to put any millage questions, the cheapest way for us to do that would be to tag on to that November election. So, and the deadline for the November election will be sometime in early August to get the ballot language to the county. That's all I have.
Okay. Anything else? Manager's report? In the packet?
Yep, you do have a written report in your packet. The only item I would like to speak to on that written report is the ice rink. As you know, we have difficulty maintaining ice on the ice rink when it's a warm, sunny day. Next week is supposed to be in the 30s all week again. When the surface is soft enough, in our opinion, that it's hazardous, we will be closing the ice rink. When the ice rink is closed, we will also be closing the warming building, because there's no point in having that open when no one's using the ice. So just information for the board in case somebody calls and complains. We put a sign up on the fence when the ice is secured as being unsafe. So we have difficulty keeping good ice. The last few winters have not been kind for ice. So at any event, it is heavily used when it's there, and we are maintaining it. So along the same lines, we are receiving requests for exhibition games using the ice rink. The Marquette Mutineers have asked to schedule an exhibition game with a Northern Michigan University club team, and we've also received a request from the Northern hockey team to have an inter-squad exhibition. To this point, the board has taken a position that it is not a rink for team use. So I would like the board to think about that and give me some indication as to what your pleasure would be with regard to those kinds of games. You will be hearing something from the Community Events Committee, because I have passed that along to them for possibility of creating a community event around it. The issues that I see there are we have extremely limited parking, especially in the wintertime with snow piles plowed up, and we have no capacity for audience, basically. We don't have bleachers, and there are snow piles all around the rink. So those are some liability concerns that I have with regard to that.
Pardon me. You also have another problem, excess use of the rink by teams. We don't have a Kubota, or we don't have a way to refinish
We do have the Zamboni over there, so we still have the Zamboni, so we are using that, but I understand what you're saying. We don't have refrigerated ice. We're reliant upon natural refrigeration, and if it's a warm day, it's not going to happen.
Well, and I'm thinking in terms of more adult teams utilizing the limited rink without the ability to refinish it means our citizens won't be able to use it until so I mean, that's another thought for us, but it's also a very good excuse to pass on.
Well, I do bring it to the board's attention because we are getting the requests, and if we start doing exhibition games, I guarantee you there will be many more requests.
Is that it, John? Okay. Dave?
I would think that this would be something that should be passed on to the events committee. And I think there's a lot to be said for something like a northern 3-on-3 scrimmage with the kids and stuff out there. I think that does a lot for the community, and that's what it's all about. But I think as opposed to renting the ice, it should be more along the lines of the same thing we do with the Community Events Day. But I think the event committee ought to take a look at it and see if there's any benefit to be had with hosting one of those, and come back and recommend something to the board.
You'll probably see that at your February 6th meeting.
I would think that'd be kind of hard because we can't control the ice. And what if they go through all the process of advertising and getting people here and setting it up, and
Then you go to broom hockey.
we don't have the ice?
Well, that's the chance they take. I mean, they certainly know the situation, but
Yeah.
that's why I say rather than us sit here and hash it all out, I just think the events committee ought to take a look at it and see if they got a recommendation.
Well, I bring it to the board because the board's posture has been no team use. So that's why it's here. The Community Events Committee is looking at it and is likely going to be making a recommendation to your February 6th meeting for something in early February to have a community event around such a scrimmage.
I think you were first.
I really do. I think this would be a great thing to happen for our township, to have that happen. it just gives more exposure for the residents to come over and watch what's going on and see it. They'll be involved in it. Parking, we can work out the problems, you know, and there's opportunities there that we can work with the surrounding parking, open parking. But I just think it's great. I think it's something that we have to look, and I believe with the events committee will take a look at it, and I think they'll come back favorably and saying, yes, we should. It should be part of one of, we're always trying to look for events that get people to our facility here, because it's a great facility. Not only the ball field, but the hockey. I mean, that's what we put it in there for. You know, I mean, we could have had just take the snowplow and go around the ball field, you know, but it's not designed for that. The ball field isn't, but I just think it'd be great. So I think we should refer it back to the events committee.
Randy?
Yeah, and the manager's right, it has to be early February, because as every day we move on, the sun gets higher, and by the end of February, you get a nice sunny day, you might not have ice.
Last year, it was the 24th of February that we had the event out there, and halfway through, we had to cut down to half ice because it was bare spot at the north end.
Many years ago, there was an outdoor game in the Sioux, and it was the 28th of February, and they quite didn't make it because the sun was too high that day, and it burned the hole in the ice.
Well, we discussed at the events committee that if we have something like that, and anything like that, if it's designed for ice skates, we can switch over to
Boot
room
hockey.
hockey.
Boot hockey.
Or
yeah.
boot.
Because you can't depend on with the weather. So, but I just think it'd be a great asset for the cooperation with Northern or the other ones working together with us. I think we have, you know, some benefits just carry over with that. So
That's even more reason to have a roof over the thing. It would help.
Now, the primary issue is Lakeview and Barry Event Center ice is really expensive. So that's the primary reason that they're looking to our rink.
Dan?
We talked about what Randy was saying about a roof over it. Down in Florida, and I know there's snow load and everything else up here, but they've got these types of canvas sun shades that they put around the pools, and they're very taut, and I would believe that it would not be that difficult to get the snow off of them, to make just a type of a sunshade thing, something to look into anyhow, over the roof, rather than what we were talking about, a trussed roof, and I mean, we're looking at a lot of money.
Dave will
Have
figure
to
it
get a
out.
grant. There's no way.
We actually looked at that, and it has to be an enclosed tent because it's pumped up with air pressure to keep it inflated.
These aren't. They've got a framework and everything else around them, and it's quite a thick fabric on them. And the sun doesn't penetrate them, and they have them over their pools.
Have you noticed down around Oconto, Wisconsin, if you're heading for Green Bay, the blue and white barn?
Yeah.
We looked into one of those. It was $100,000 to cover our ice. Because it does have a framework. It does have an internal metal framework that supports it. And for 75 by 150, it was $100,000.
Artificial ice looks pretty good.
Okay. Anything else for the manager? Review of motions, Randy.
Okay, the consent agenda was approved. The regular agenda was approved as amended. The MNTF grant payment request was approved. Power plan insurance was approved. And I believe that is it. Only action item is for the manager to get that information to us about the future, the water project, the phase 2, the memo and information. That was the action
And also
item.
the revised sheriff contract.
And the revised sheriff contract. And that's it.
And it looks like a couple of you didn't bring your policy manuals, so I'm going to add that to the next addenda too. I want to,
Policy governance?
yeah, we need to talk about at least February stuff. So if you make yourself a note to bring your policy manual next time, that would be great. And it'll be on the agenda. Any board member comment? Ernie?
One, I like to bring this up every time. 4 weeks, approximately 4 weeks.
Never mind,
for
never
tax
mind.
time. And that before we have to start charging a little penalty in that, so. You have approximately 4 weeks left in that, somewhere in that vicinity in that, so.
You're just a bundle of joy, aren't you?
The other part of, I attended as a board representative to the Marquette Township Business Association today, and one item I wanted to bring back is that they allocated $2,500 for the underpass, and the letter is coming to the township confirming that, along with a letter of support at the same time, so.
Awesome. Anything else from board members? Pete?
Randy, who do we contact for people plowing intersection, or towards the intersection, sort of making it, kind of blocking it? What do you call it?
Into the clear
Do they tell
vision?
them to call it here? Do they tell them to call it county?
You talking about into the clear vision
Yeah, well,
areas?
they're, say a house is right on the corner there and they're plowing the snow, say north, and it's blocking the sight from a person coming up from the side street. Should you call-
If you can give me the address, I'll get in touch with the road commission and they will have them clear.
Okay. Second thing is a hospital connecting to the sewer. Is there any cost to us on that?
No. The only,
Because it goes right by there, so I just wondering if,
it actually will be tying into the interceptor from that point to the treatment facility, and that might be what's being talked about in the amendment of the agreement. I don't know that. Kirk got waylaid. His flights were all canceled coming back, so he's out. He was supposed to be back for tonight, but he won't be back till tomorrow. So I can ask him that question and get that answer. But that would not impact our rates, per se.
I just don't think that we should be paying for anything that, because we're a partnership with the.
Well,
sewer project.
the interceptor is ours into the city, and then the city is
Okay.
responsible for it as well.
I just want to raise a question, so,
Yep.
all right, thank you.
Any other comments? We do not have a closed session. We put this on here in case we might have one, but we haven't had a chance to get together with any of the union representatives to talk to them after we had already talked. So we put it on as a placeholder just in case, and then when Kirk got waylaid at the airport too. So I should have taken that off. I forgot we even had it on there.
Support.
Oh, it scared me there for a minute. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 8:13, we are adjourned. Thank you.